Welcome to the Martin Luther King Observance. Now, I've been inspired by Bob Bach, who you don't know, but from his island I summer on. He wrote this poem, Where Have My Heroes Gone? John McCain, the American war heroes that suffered for all of us, who stood alone on the Senate floor to protect health care. John Lewis, the soul of the House, beaten on the march to Selma, asking us to stand up for good trouble. Martin Luther King, a prophetic voice in modern times with all the beloved community. Ruth Ginsburg, a champion of justice and women's rights, who was able to engage with others of differing views. There are many others. But let me remind you of what a newly elected senator said, that recently he has said that violence does not win. Also, remember Stuart Jester, who was a freedom rider. Yes, today we are gathered together because of a man of peace that led people in peace. Let us pray for peace and for love of all mankind. And one of the ways that we celebrate this is through the arts, which is why we've decided to have a playwright from Arlington as the speaker.
Help us, O God, as we strive for what is right and try to love one another, making each person of infinite importance. Amen.
Good evening, freedom fighters in ACMi land. My name is Pearl Morrison. I'm a member of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Birthday Celebration Committee. This is our 33rd year, as you know. And my responsibility, for those of you who have been attending most of the programs, you know, is that my job is to ask you if you would be so kind to continue to support the work of the Martin Luther King Committee. Now, I must say, and I must thank the people that have been very, very, very generous to our committee. That would be our sponsors, and they're listed in the book. but we don't have one this year. The sponsors, and also the church and religious and faith community, our community and civic organizations, and then just individuals that have been just so kind over the years to the Martin Luther King Committee. Now, what we have done with those funds is we have always tried to be good stewards of your kindness. And this past year, we awarded 2 $1,000 scholarships to graduating seniors at Arlington High School. One is going to Bucknell, and the other one is going to Morehouse. In addition to that, we have donated to the Arlington EATS, the Boston Food Bank, Black Lives Matter, and the library, the Massachusetts Library Association. We have donated money to them in honor of Judy Paradis, a person from Arlington that we honored last year's program. We have also donated to other entities in Arlington that are doing charitable things throughout the town. Another one of our interests has always been the Mass Bail Bond Committee. So we continue to support those organizations that are doing the work of Dr. King. Now, this is just a wonderful program. It's a wonderful time of year. For me in particular, I just enjoy doing this. This is the 33rd year, and I've been on the committee for 33 years. But you know, the way I think of Dr. King is that he is a person that is a good person that has lived a good life. And when you're a good person, doing good, living a good life, you leave behind a lasting legacy of goodness. And Dr. King has been the gift to humankind. So in addition to our being good stewards, we also feel that we have to be good storytellers. And so every year we bring someone to you that has a story that is so significant to the legacy of Dr. King. And no, there's no different this year. You're going to enjoy a very wonderful young woman. So having said that, if you are able to, you may send a check to the Martin Luther King Birthday Celebration Committee, Post Office Box 320, Arlington, Mass. 02476, or you may send it electronically, GoFundMe.com, and then they tell me you should type in the Martin Luther King Committee. If you're having a problem with either one of them, call Town Hall. They'll put you in touch with one of us. So thank you very much for giving me the privilege to come before you. I really miss being in Town Hall with you, but let's look forward to next year when we'll have a chance to hug and have a cookie from Cookie Time and really enjoy one another's company. So thank you and enjoy this evening.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Mikhail Satcher. I'm honored to be this year's Master of Ceremonies for our Martin Luther King celebration, our annual event that we all look forward to putting on. I'd like to ask you the question first though, what is different this year? Of course, it's the setting. This is a virtual event. The pandemic across the world has caused us to change the way we operate, but that's okay because even though the setting is different, the focus is still the same. We are here on the occasion to honor Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, to pay tribute to his life and his legacy and all that he's done to make this world a better place. It is our hope today that our special event and all that you hear and experience may inspire you to become an agent of change in this world today. And we know that right now we need people who want to be upstanders instead of bystanders. one other thing I'd like to say today before we move forward is that we want to honor two of our long-term members who have recently retired. That is Lee Femer and Janice Becky. They're institutions in our community, but because we are virtual, we're going to delay that celebration and honoring of them until next year. So stay tuned for announcements about that as we proceed throughout the year. But next, you're going to be featured with the music of the Brotherhood Chorus of Concord Baptist Church. If you were with us last year, you heard this great musical performance. So it's still the same great spiritual performance, and you're going to be blessed to hear them. And after you hear the music, you will be hearing from Jillian Harvey, who is going to introduce to you our key person for our featured event. Jillian Harvey brings to us as a new member of the Martin Luther King Committee her talents and skills and experience as Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the town of Arlington. She's also a member of the NAACP of the Mystic Valley Branch and a steering committee member of the local CHNA 17. And she's also, as I like to say, I'm proud to say, she is a member of the MLK committee here in Arlington. I'm going to step aside now and let you hear this musical performance of the Brotherhood Chorus.
Though the storms keep on raging in my life, and sometimes it's hard to tell the night from day. Still that hope that lies within is reassured as I keep my eyes upon the distant shore. I know he'll lead me safely to that blessed place he's prepared. But if the storms don't cease and the winds keep on blowing in my life, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. Oh yeah, though the storm winds keep on raging in my life, and sometimes it's hard to tell the night from day. Still that hope that lies within is reassured as I keep my eyes upon the distant shore. I know he'll lead me safely to that blessed place he's prepared. But if the storms don't cease and the winds keep on blowing, blowing in my life, my soul, yeah, has been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord. Now I know in this life we're gonna get tossed sometimes, yeah, by the waves and the currents, and you know they get so fierce. But in the Word of God, I got an anchor, yes I do, and it keeps me steadfast, unmovable, despite any tide. But if the storms don't cease, and just in case the winds keep on blowing, blowing, blowing in my life, my soul, yeah, has been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul has been anchored in the Lord. You see, my soul's been anchored. 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 You see, the billows may roll The breakers may dash, I shall not sway, because he holds me fast. Dark is the day, clouds in the sky. I know I'm alright, because Jesus is mine. You see, my soul's been anchored, yeah. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored. Woo. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, yeah. In the Lord, my soul has been anchored in the Lord.
I'm Jillian Harvey. I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the town of Arlington. And I'm here to introduce Crystal Haynes, who is an Emmy Award-winning journalist at Boston 25 News with more than 15 years of broadcast experience. She's the Events Working Group Lead on the Human Rights Commission, a member of the Boston Association of Black Journalists, the NAACP, and is a trained facilitator in gender-based violence prevention and incidents in racism through Northeastern University's Center for Sport and Society. Crystal holds a BS in broadcast journalism from Emerson College and a master's degree in media advocacy from Northeastern University's College of Arts, Media, and Design. She grew up in Springfield, Mass., but has called Arlington home since 2017, joining her husband and his family, who have lived in town for more than 4 generations. Crystal is also a new member of the Arlington MLK Committee.
Hi, everybody. Crystal Haynes here from the MLK Committee, and it is my esteemed pleasure to be able to have a conversation with Kirsten Greenwich. Kirsten Greenwich is a playwright from right here in Arlington, and it is my esteemed pleasure to have her here speaking at this MLK celebration, because she certainly embodies some of the best that Arlington has to offer here and is an important voice in the dialogue we have been having, not just since this summer, but for years, about pursuing racial justice and social justice. You know, growing up, Kirsten regularly wrote and produced plays with other kids in the neighborhood here in Arlington, as well as her sisters, and began taking theater classes at Wheelock Family Theater while still in high school. She attended Wesleyan University as a U.S. history major, and she studied playwriting and won her first playwriting award. Now, soon after, she moved on to the Playwrights Workshop at the University of Iowa. Now, Kirsten is the recipient of a Village Voice Obie Award for her play Milk Like Sugar, which was commissioned by La Jolla Playhouse and Theater Masters. Her other plays include Luck of the Irish, Zenith, Bud Not Buddy, and others. Thank you so much for being with us, Kirsten.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So talk to me a little bit about your family's history in Arlington, because I think, you know, you have all these great plays out there, and I don't think that a lot of folks know about your connection here.
My family moved here in the 50s for my mom to go to school at what was then St. Anne's, and then it turned into this Germain Lawrence School. And at the time, they were just looking for the best education for my mother. And at that point, they had her going there as a boarder. And we always called it going to school with the nuns. So it was an Episcopalian order. And they just wanted to move a little closer so that on weekends, they didn't have to travel so far from the South End to be able to see her and visit her. And she was about 7 or 8 at that time. So they moved a little closer to her on what was then called it's still called the Concord Turnpike, but it was before they widened it. And they lived there near another African-American family called the Franklins, who we are still friends with today. They sent my uncle and my aunt to the Arlington Public Schools, and they enjoyed Arlington very, very much. And that was the start of everything. And so the generation above me went to school here in various forms. And then I came up and I began school at Parmenter School, which is no longer. I do hear that they're making that into another public school because the population has grown so much in Arlington. And then I also went to Arlington High. In between there, I went to a Quaker school in Cambridge. But that's the beginnings of our time here in Arlington.
And so what was that experience like? Because I understand yours was one of the first Black families to even move into Arlington.
I think that first of all, Arlington, I think, felt much more rural than it does now. So I think my mom would be the first to say that it felt like, so a lot of it felt like just living in a wilderness. Like, she tells these stories of getting up, um, and one of the first things she'd do is get on her bike and go to Monon Works Park and just spend like the whole day there. Maybe come home for lunch if she didn't manage to bring something with her, but just felt like she was just exploring the whole day. So those parts she really liked if she was home from school. And then sometimes she did face a lot of challenges, and I think my aunt and uncle would say that they did face challenges, particularly in the public school system. But on the other hand, they had neighbors that they really loved and who they still keep in touch with. They eventually moved from the Concord Turnpike when the highway was widened, and they ended up living on Claremont Avenue. So if you, obviously, our audience knows Arlington, so Claremont Avenue's in the Heights, and that actually, ironically, ended up being on the same street that St. Anne's was on. But by the time they moved there, my mother was in college, I believe. So she was not there when they were when she was going to school there.
You know, I mentioned that you used to write and produce plays, you know, with kids in the neighborhood and with your family members. Tell me about that experience and how your lived experience was sort of manifesting in some of those plays.
Yes. So when I was growing up, I was what my parents would describe as a dramatic child, which I think is their kind way of saying I was imaginative and creative, and sometimes a little bit difficult and obstinate in how many times I would ask them to go into their own living room and pay me a fee to be able to sit there and watch these like huge dramatic reenactments for hours on end. But what I was really learning was how to produce, and how to put my thoughts and imagination into action. So I had my my theater company was myself, who was the artistic director, and our next door neighbor, Toby Wickstrom. And so we ran that theater company, and then we would what we would do with the money that we got was then we'd put it into we'd get concessions, and we'd charge a gate fee, and then we put it back into the theater. The younger kids were our theater company, and I like to take credit that Toby then one of his specialties now is that he studies images of people of color in 17th century French drama, which is a very specific field of study. And so there, I like to think that we like brought him along. The Greenwich sisters brought him along. So going to school or growing up in Arlington, I think we shared in my mom's experience in that it was a place where we got to indulge in our imagination in a lot of ways. And I also had a lot of teachers and grownups who were very supportive of that. I think I was in first and second grade when I was in Parmenter. I had a lot of teachers who did believe in me, and also in the high school as well. I think that the drama program looked a little bit different back when I was in high school. And so the messages that I got was that diversity, while it was championed on some levels, I did not always see myself in the plays that were being produced. And that's why I ended up at Wheelock Family Theater.
I'm curious, Luck of the Irish has a very close connection to you. Talk to me about producing that play, putting that play together, and for folks who haven't seen it yet, talk about what it's about.
So that play is based on how my grandparents purchased their house in Arlington. And at the time, they had tried to purchase a house first in Newton. And when the neighbors found out that they were a Black family, they were not happy about that. And so that sale did not go through. So what they did with their house on Claremont Avenue is they enlisted the help of a neighbor from the South End who had blonde hair and blue eyes, presented as white, was Jewish. So depending on how you think of it, ethnicity, was not necessarily Anglo-Saxon and was not Anglo-Saxon and white, represented as white. And my grandmother and this neighbor dressed up in their finest clothes, had seen this ad about this house in the paper, and came to look at it. They did not explain what their relationship was. If you were to look at them, it might have looked like it was a white woman bringing her maid to look at a house. They liked that. My grandmother liked the house. The homeowner and my grandmother shook on it. So this is before the days of prearranged mortgages, all that, prefixed mortgages, all that kind of stuff. And they agreed to buy the house. And the person who was selling the house actually did want to sell the house pretty quickly. He wanted to, the family lawyers, and he wanted to move to Florida. And that was that. And they moved in. There was no problem with them moving in after the sale, but what my family called that was ghost buying. And so that was the story of how my grandparents bought that house. And I was always fascinated by that story. And I wanted to make a play about it. When I wrote the play and was approached by the Huntington to recommission, so the play, because I could work on it again. The Huntington wanted to kind of do research on the play and asked several universities and dramaturgs in other venues if they had heard of this term, and nobody had heard of the term. They were like, I think she means redlining. And I said, I do not mean redlining. I mean a specific arrangement. So we went ahead with putting up the play at the Huntington in the spring of 2012. And after putting it on, many other people came forward and said, this is how I purchased, my house, or my family purchased their house. And there were many more stories about that particular arrangement.
This ghost buying
Mhm.
is what you mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. What do you think about, what do you hope people take away from that particular piece?
the piece really is about how there's many different layers to the piece. So there's the generation that we move through time a lot in the generation that engaged in the ghost buying, and then there's a generation 2 generations later that are kind of left with that legacy and trying to figure out what that meant, and the idea of home and belonging. And so the generation who would be my generation is really trying to figure out, do we belong here? And I think it's a question that many people ask in terms of living in America. How do we belong? How do we intersect in a landscape that doesn't always seem like they want people who are othered to engage with it? The generation that's missing in the play intentionally is the middle generation, so my mother's generation. I think my mom always had a love affair with moving when we were younger. Like, we lived in Arlington, but she was like, I think it's healthy to move every 2 years. And I was like, what? No, this is my home. I love moving. And I think that comes from some of the difficulties she had growing up in Arlington, and kind of loving Arlington, loving the good parts of Arlington, and then having some really difficult times coming of age sometimes in a town that couldn't always appreciate her for who she was.
As we move into this season of these cries for racial justice, as we heard protests over the summer, your work has a through line of really telling Black stories, other stories. How do you see your work as part of the ongoing conversation now, as after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the summer of unrest?
Well, I hope it continues to ask questions about how we're doing better, how we can continue to do better. Questions about our history. So as you mentioned, I was a U.S. history major, and how that how that history kind of laps up to our present and what that means, and how are we taking what our forefathers and foremothers taught us and left for us, and how is that integrated within our everyday lives. Um, it's interesting because I think a lot of the work that the generations that came before us, we're seeing that come to fruition now. I don't think the world that we're existing in now, I don't think my grandparents ever could have thought that we would be seeing this moment. Like, I don't know. I wish my grandparents were still alive, because I'd love to know what they would think about seeing Black Lives Matter signs in Arlington, even when people remove the signs. And when that happens, I know I still keep up with Arlington. So when that happens, I feel deeply hurt. But then I think to myself, growing up in Arlington, I can't imagine a world where in Arlington where those signs would have been put up by people other than people of color in Arlington, or that there would be enough people of color in Arlington to feel safe to put them up. So even though change feels small and possibly too incremental to feel like it's making a difference, it's just a completely different world that my grandparents lived in. And knowing that they were some of the first, I would have loved to be able to know what they feel about that. Like one of the places that my grandfather had a huge influence on is the Black Mason graveyard in East Arlington. So he was instrumental in getting that recognized. And when I was in college, we ended up living in the housing development on our house was on Fremont Street. Our apartment was on Fremont Street. So I used to walk, when I was back from college, I used to walk to the T past that. And I used to see every few months, someone would spray paint a swastika on that. So the idea that we are having these conversations now is monumental to me, even though I know that this is just scratching the surface about the reckoning that our country is doing, and that our country, our state, our town is doing.
We are celebrating the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When you think about his legacy, what comes to mind to you as a playwright, as an artist, as an author?
I think a lot about, of course, the work that he did for justice, for racial justice, and then also the work that he was doing towards the end of his life about class inequity. And I'm hopeful that we are now coming to a moment where we're talking about how all of these things intersect, and that they all are in concert with each other, and that you cannot isolate them all, because they all are speaking to each other, and you cannot talk about racial injustice without also talking about economic injustice as well. So that's what I think about a lot when I think about Dr. King, and I think about his legacy and the steps we have to move the needle forward.
Kirsten, I want to thank you so much for your time, and we certainly are extremely proud of you as Arlington residents, and we're always rooting for you in the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for being with us today and sharing a little bit about your work.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hello, I'm back again. Wow, wasn't that a fantastic interview session? There was a powerful, informative, and inspirational interview. And the world is blessed to have a Kirsten Greenwich who is giving us such great inspiration through her talents and her skills. And of course, it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have our award-winning reporter, Crystal Haynes, asking the questions and conducting this powerful interview. I also like to boast that she is a member, one of our newest members of the MLK committee as well. As we preview the rest of our program, let's prepare for our annual singing of the Anthem of Freedom, which was penned by James Weldon Johnson years ago. It's called Lift Every Voice and Sing. And after we hear that song and we sing it wherever you're in place, in your homes, it'll be followed by our benediction by the interim minister of the First Baptist Church of Arlington, Reverend Peter Beckwith. And after the benediction, I'll come back for my closing remarks. Thank you.
And now to him who is able to keep you from falling and to present you before his glorious presence without fault and with great joy. To the only God our Savior be glory, majesty, power, and authority before all ages, now and forevermore. Amen.
What a great day. What a great program. And all could not have happened if not for you. Your continued support of our work and our mission, also your continued financial support, and we're grateful for that. Also, we'd like to thank our musical guests in the person of Paul White, the Brotherhood Chorus of Concord Baptist Church, our clergy members, Reverend Paul Jackson, Reverend Peter Beckwith, and of course our very special guest, the very talented playwright, Kirsten Greenwich, who is just phenomenal. We're thankful for her, and we hope to see her again, hear more about her in the future. And we'd like to give overall thanks to and recognition of the ACMi here in Arlington and their production manager, Katie Chang, who's with us today to make this program possible. So we want to just always know that we have partners in our mission here with ACMi. And then last but not least, we want to thank each and every member of the Martin Luther King Committee of the town of Arlington. You will see their names will look across the screen. There are many members who have been here long before I came and joined 18 years ago. I learned from them, but they're just stalwart fighters for justice in the struggle. So we want to say thank you for all that you've done and the teamwork we've done for our town, but thank you all out there for encouraging us. As we sign off, you can see the note about the Arlington, MLK of Arlington GoFundMe page for your continued donations, or you can send any donation the old-fashioned way to our P.O. box. Just remember, the struggle continues, and our desire to build a beloved community as Dr. King once said. Thank you, and until next year, bye-bye.